It was an ordinary Saturday morning in our Atlanta neighborhood, the kind where the sun filters through the dogwood trees just right, casting dappled light on the immaculate lawns. I could hear children laughing in distant yards, the sound carrying on the warm spring air. Everything felt safe, ordinary. I was in my weekend uniform, old jeans, one of Reginald's old college t-shirts, my hair pulled back in a messy bun. My hands smelled like lemon cleaner and the vanilla air freshener I kept in the garage. I was cleaning Reginald's car, his pride and joy, that sleek black Audi he bought after his last promotion, the one he washed every Sunday and would not let the kids eat in. He had left it messy after his latest business trip to Charlotte, and I had volunteered to clean it as a surprise. That is the kind of wife I was. Thoughtful, devoted, naive. I started with the usual routine, wiping down the gleaming dashboard, vacuuming the floor mats, clearing out the empty coffee cups and receipts from the center console. Everything was normal, until I reached under the passenger seat to grab what I thought was a wadded-up napkin. My fingers did not touch paper. They touched silk. I pulled it out slowly, my brain struggling to make sense of what I was holding. Red lace panties, expensive ones, the kind with a little satin bow at the front, the kind I had not worn in years, because who has time for that when you're raising teenagers and managing a household? But it was not the underwear itself that stopped my heart. It was the note. Pinned to the fabric with a small gold safety pin was a piece of cream-colored paper, folded once. The handwriting was feminine, all loops and curves. I unfolded it with fingers that suddenly felt numb. Smell me anytime you miss me. Chloe. Chloe. The world tilted. The concrete floor of my own garage seemed to shift and ripple beneath my feet. The air grew thick, pressing against my chest until I could not draw a proper breath. Chloe. Not just a pair of panties, not just evidence of a fleeting mistake, a name, a real person, someone who had sat in this seat, in my car, in my life. Someone who had been close enough to my husband to leave him a souvenir. I brought the fabric closer, against my will. The smell hit me. A perfume. Sweet and cloying. Nothing like the light citrus I wore. And underneath it, something more intimate, more damning. The scent of another woman's body, mixed with my husband's expensive cologne. My vision blurred. Not with tears. Not yet. It blurred with something darker. Rage. Shock. A grief so profound it felt like drowning. My hands shook violently. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run into the house and throw this filthy piece of fabric in Reginald's face. He was sitting at the kitchen table right then, reading his newspaper, still warm and content from the breakfast I had made for him not an hour ago. I wanted to demand answers, to hear him stammer and lie and beg. But I did not do any of that. Because in that moment, standing in the garage with another woman's lingerie in my hand, something inside me shifted. Something cold. Something calculating. The part of me I thought was dead and buried. Evelyn Monroe, junior partner at one of Atlanta's top law firms, woke up. Confrontation would give him power. It would let him twist the narrative, gaslight me, make excuses. He would paint me as the hysterical, paranoid wife. He would have time to cover his tracks. No, I was not giving him that satisfaction. My hand stopped shaking. My breathing steadied. I bent down slowly, picked up the panties and the note. I folded them carefully, deliberately, and slipped them deep into the pocket of my jeans. Then, I finished cleaning his car. I vacuumed every crumb. I wiped every surface until it gleamed. When I walked back into the house 20 minutes later, Reginald looked up from his paper. That charming smile, the one that used to make my heart leap, spread across his face. "Car looks great, babe." "You are the best." I smiled back. I walked over and kissed his cheek. His skin was warm against my lips. "Anything for you?" "Honey," I said. My voice was honey sweet. But my eyes, reflected in the glass of the kitchen window, were as cold as ice. The case had just been opened. That night, sleep was an impossibility. I lay perfectly still in our king-sized bed, the moonlight streaming through the blinds, painting silver stripes across the expensive duvet. Beside me, Reginald slept the deep, untroubled sleep of a man with no conscience. He was snoring softly, one arm thrown carelessly across his chest. I stared at the ceiling, the red lace panties and Chloe's note hidden away in my ensuite bathroom, tucked beneath my own lingerie. A cancer hidden in the heart of my home. My mind raced, traveling back 15 years, back to a life I barely recognized. I was not always Mrs. Reginald Monroe, coordinator of carpools and president of the PTA. 15 years ago, I was Evelyn Montgomery, a name that meant something in Atlanta's legal circles. I was 29, hungry, and had just made junior partner at Morrison and Blake, one of the most prestigious corporate law firms in the Southeast. I wore power suits that cost more than most people's monthly rent. I had a corner office on the 19th floor with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Peachtree Street. My billable hours were legendary. My win record was untouchable. I was also exhausted, lonely, running on nothing but ambition and overpriced coffee. That is when I met Reginald. He was at a charity gala I had been forced to attend. He was in corporate sales then, ambitious, charming, with a smile that could light up a stadium. When he introduced himself, he did not ask what I did for a living. He asked what made me happy. No one had asked me that in years. We fell in love hard and fast. Long dinners that stretched past midnight. Weekend road trips to Savannah, his hand resting on my knee as we drove. Everyone said we were the perfect match. The power couple. The ones who had it all figured out. We got married in a small, beautiful ceremony at my grandmother's church. I wore my mother's pearls. He wore his grandfather's cufflinks. We danced to Al Green under string lights, and I remember thinking, this is it. This is what true happiness feels like. For the first few years, we balanced it all. I worked crushing hours, but he was my biggest supporter. He would have dinner waiting when I worked late. He would massage my shoulders while I prepped for trials, telling everyone his wife was going to be a judge someday. Then came Imani, our daughter. Beautiful, perfect, and utterly life-changing. Suddenly, my priorities shifted in a way I never saw coming. The 60-hour work weeks felt different when I was missing her first smiles, her first words. The late-night strategy sessions felt hollow when I knew my baby was reaching for me at bedtime and finding a nanny instead. I tried to balance it. Lord knows I tried. But when our son, Jamal, came along 3 years later, I realized I was not just tired. I was drowning. Court deadlines collided with parent-teacher conferences. Depositions overlapped with pediatrician appointments. I remember standing in the courthouse bathroom, pumping breast milk between witness testimonies, crying from exhaustion and guilt. Something had to give. So, I made the choice. Family over career. Love over ambition. Them over me. I stepped back from the partner track. I took a leave of absence that slowly, quietly, became permanent. I traded my power suits for yoga pants, my corner office for a kitchen island covered in finger paintings and spelling homework. I told myself it was temporary, that I would go back when the kids were older. Reginald held my hands, his eyes sincere. This is for us, Evelyn, your sacrifice. It is building our foundation. I swear I will make it worth it. You will never regret this. Everyone praised me. Such a devoted mother, such a supportive wife. What they did not say was, so foolish. While I was home puring organic vegetables and chaperoning field trips, Reginald's career exploded. He moved from sales to management, then to senior management. The promotions came one after another. The money poured in. We upgraded from our modest starter home to this 6-bedroom colonial in the suburbs, with its 3-car garage and swimming pool. From the outside, we were the American dream. I turned my head on the pillow, the silk cold against my cheek. I looked at the man beside me, the man who had taken my ambition and forged it into a weapon to build his kingdom. I had given up everything, my name, my power, my future, and he had thanked me with Chloe. The next morning, the performance began. I woke up, slipped into my robe, and went downstairs to make coffee. I was an actress playing the role of a lifetime, the contented wife. When Reginald came down, dressed in one of his expensive suits, I smiled and handed him his mug. Morning, honey. Sleep well? Like a rock, he said, kissing my forehead. He did not notice the flinch that rippled through me. He did not notice anything. He sat at the kitchen island, immediately pulling out his phone, his thumb flying across the screen. I watched him. Really watched him for the first time in years. The changes had been so gradual I had almost missed them. Little cracks in the foundation I had willfully ignored. There was the new cologne, an expensive, musky scent he had started wearing about 8 months ago. I had commented on it once. Oh, just something new I'm trying, he had said dismissively. Now, I realized it was not for me. It was for Chloe. Then came the business trips. His territory had always been the Southeast, but suddenly, Charlotte became his second home. They are opening a new branch, babe, he had explained, packing his bag. They need my expertise. It is a huge opportunity. Weekends blurred into weeks. He would leave on a Sunday evening and come back Friday afternoon, exhausted but wired, smelling like that cologne and hotel soap, and the phone. That was the biggest change. His phone, which used to be tossed carelessly on the counter, was now his constant companion. It was always placed face down, on the dinner table, on the nightstand, even in the bathroom. If it buzzed with a notification, he would snatch it up, his shoulders tensing as he angled the screen away from me. Just work, he would mutter, his focus already gone. I poured myself a cup of coffee, my hand perfectly steady. I thought about the red lace, the note, the cloying perfume. I realized, with the cold clarity of a judge handing down a sentence, that I needed irrefutable proof. Confronting him now, with just the panties, would be a fatal mistake. He was a master negotiator, a charmer. He would twist it. He would lie. He would say it was a prank from his buddies. He would say I was crazy, paranoid, insecure. He would gaslight me until I questioned my own sanity. No, I would not give him the chance. I was not a hysterical wife. I was an attorney, and I was going to build a case. That night, I waited until the house was still. until I heard the deep, even sound of his breathing from our bedroom. I slipped out of bed, pulling on my robe. I padded silently down the carpeted hallway to his home office. The door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open. The moonlight cast a blue glow over his large mahogany desk, his leather chair, his state-of-the-art laptop. I sat down, the leather cool against my skin. I opened the laptop. The screen lit up, illuminating my face. It asked for a password. I typed in the 6 digits I had seen him use 100 times, thinking I was just remembering something trivial. Imani one, the name of our firstborn child. The irony tasted like ash in my mouth. The computer unlocked. "All right, Reginald," I whispered into the quiet room. "Let us see how busy your work has really been." I started with the money. In a marriage, money is a map of a person's priorities. In this case, it was a map of his betrayal. We had a joint account for household expenses, but Reginald kept a separate corporate Amex for business expenses. "It just makes the taxes easier, babe," he had said. "You do not need to worry your head about it." I had never questioned it. Why would I? I trusted him. Trusted. Past tense. I opened a browser window and navigated to the American Express login page. I typed in his username and the password I had memorized years ago when I managed our finances. Reggie. ATL1. Arrogant. Predictable. My heart hammered against my ribs. A dull, heavy thump, thump, thump in the silent room. But my face remained perfectly calm. Years of maintaining a courtroom poker face do not just disappear. The account summary loaded. I clicked on statements. I opened the statement from his last business trip to Charlotte, the one where he had stayed at the Holiday Inn near the convention center. Or so he said. The first charge that jumped out was not the Holiday Inn. The Ritz-Carlton, Charlotte, $2,450. Not a one-night stay, a 3-night stay. In a suite, judging by the price. My breath hitched. I kept scrolling. Morton Steakhouse. $412.50. A dinner for 2. On the same night, he had texted me a photo of a sad-looking burger, claiming he was eating quick at the hotel bar before bed. Line after line of lies. Hotel after hotel. The Westin in Houston. The Marriott in Chicago. Business trips that suddenly looked a lot more like romantic getaways. Then I saw it. I clicked back 3 months to the statement from February. Tiffany and Company, $1,847. I stared at the charge until the numbers blurred. $1,847. It was not our anniversary. It was not my birthday. It was not Christmas. I thought back to February. I remembered getting nothing. Not even flowers from the gas station. He had been too busy. He had claimed, "Work is just crushing me, babe." He was not crushed. He was buying jewelry. Just not for me. The betrayal was so cold, so transactional. It stole my breath. He had not just given another woman his body. He had given her our money. The money I had helped him earn by sacrificing my own career. The money I saved by clipping coupons and managing the household budget. He was taking my sacrifice and draping it around another woman's neck. I did not cry. I clicked print. The printer in the corner whirred to life, spitting out page after page of his treachery. Each sheet felt like another nail in the coffin of our marriage. "You are not just a cheat, Reginald," I whispered to the empty room. "You are a thief." The stack of printed statements sat on his desk, a monument to his lies. But financial proof was not enough. I needed a face. I needed to know who Chloe was. I could not access his actual phone. He kept that lock tighter than Fort Knox, a new habit I now understood. But I did not need his phone. I needed our family plan. I opened another tab and logged into our AT&T account. The password for this was one I had set 15 years ago. Monroe Family 2010. He probably did not even know it existed. I navigated to the usage details for Reginald's line. My eyes scanned the call logs for the past 6 months. My blood ran cold. It was not just a few suspicious calls. It was a pattern, a routine. One number with a Charlotte area code appeared over and over. Dozens of calls every week. Conversations that started at 11:30 p.m. and lasted until 1 a.m. Calls made the moment he checked into a hotel. Calls made on Sunday afternoons when he was supposedly catching up on proposals in his office. My hands were shaking again, but this time with a cold, precise rage. I highlighted the number, copied it, and pasted it into a reverse lookup service online. I paid the $4.99 fee without a second thought. The search results loaded instantly. Chloe Banks, age 32, 14, B, Willow Creek Apartments, Charlotte, North Carolina. My breath caught in my throat. I opened another tab. I typed her name into the LinkedIn search bar. Her profile popped up immediately. Chloe Banks, Marketing Manager, Apex Solutions, Charlotte Office, Apex Solutions, Reginald's company. Of course, it was not just some random woman. It was his coworker. I stared at her profile picture. Pretty, in that generic, corporate-approved way. Long dark hair, a bright, confident smile, a professional headshot with soft lighting. She looked ambitious, driven, unencumbered. She looked exactly like I used to. The humiliation washed over me, a sickening, drowning wave. He had not just replaced me. He had replaced me with a younger, shinier version of the woman I was before I met him. The woman I had sacrificed on the altar of our marriage. He did not want a partner. He wanted a trophy. And when his first one got tarnished by motherhood and PTA meetings, he simply went out and bought a new one. I printed her LinkedIn profile, the picture, her job title, everything. I added it to the growing pile of evidence. The paper evidence was damning. The financial records, the phone logs, the identity of his mistress. I had enough to confront him, enough to end our marriage. But the lawyer in me, the part that had won cases on irrefutable proof, knew that paper trails could be explained away. She is a troubled colleague. I was mentoring her. The jewelry was a team gift. He would lie. He would twist it. I needed something he could not deny. I needed to see it with my own eyes. I needed visual confirmation. It came 3 days later, a Wednesday evening. He called me at 4 p.m., his voice smooth and professional. Hey, babe, just letting you know I have got a late client dinner tonight. Some executives from out of town. Do not wait up for me. Oh, no problem, honey, I said, my voice dripping with fake sympathy. You work so hard. I will have a plate saved for you, just in case. You're the best, he said. The lie hung in the air between us. The moment I hung up, I called my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, and asked her to watch Imani and Jamal for a few hours. Just a last-minute book club meeting. I lied, the words tasting strange on my tongue. I completely forgot. She was happy to help, always saying I needed more me time. I changed out of my jeans and sweater. I put on dark slacks, a black turtleneck, and a baseball cap pulled low over my eyes. I felt ridiculous, like a character in a bad spy movie. But I had to know. I watched him leave at 6:30, briefcase in hand, that new cologne trailing behind him like a cloud of deceit. I waited 5 minutes. Then I slipped into my own SUV and followed him. My legal training had included surveillance techniques for gathering evidence in corporate fraud cases. I never imagined I would be using those skills on my own husband. I kept 3 cars between us, my hands gripping the steering wheel. He did not drive toward the steakhouses downtown, where he would normally take clients. He drove to Buckhead, to an upscale, romantic French bistro, the kind with candlelit tables and wine lists thicker than a novel, the kind of place we used to go for our anniversary. Before kids, before Chloe. I parked across the street, partially hidden behind a delivery van. I watched him walk inside, checking his reflection in the glass door, straightening his tie. 10 minutes later, a silver Honda Civic pulled up, the same one listed on Chloe Banks's registration. She got out. She looked exactly like her LinkedIn photo, but worse in person. Younger, more confident. She was wearing a red dress, a tight red dress that hugged curves I had lost to 2 pregnancies and 15 years of stress. Reginald met her at the entrance. And then, right there on the sidewalk, in front of God and everyone, he kissed her. It was not a friendly peck. It was a real kiss. Deep, passionate. His hand rested on the small of her back. His fingers splayed out in that intimate way he used to touch me. They laughed about something, their heads close together. Then they disappeared inside. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. I did not cry. I did not scream. I felt a sudden, crystal clarity. The kind that comes when denial finally shatters and the truth stands before you, naked and ugly. My husband was in love with another woman. I raised my phone, my hands perfectly steady. They were visible through the large picture window, sitting at a cozy corner table, ordering wine. I zoomed in. Click. The flash was obscured by the street lights, but the image was sharp, clear, devastating. Got you, I whispered to the windshield. Got you. You son of a bitch. I drove home, relieved Mrs. Patterson, and tucked my children into bed. I kissed their foreheads, breathing in the scent of their innocence, and felt a protective rage solidify in my chest. When Reginald came home at 11:30 p.m., smelling like wine and Chloe's perfume, I was in bed pretending to read. He kissed my forehead. Hey, client dinner ran long. Exhausting. You must be tired, I murmured, not looking up from my book. Get some rest. I now had a complete arsenal. The panties, the note, the bank statements, the call logs, the photos. I had everything I needed to destroy him. But I waited. A few days passed. I played the part of the perfect wife, biding my time, watching him. It was Friday night. We were at the dinner table. Amani was talking about her soccer tryouts, and Jamal was complaining about homework. It was a perfect picture of domestic bliss, a perfect lie. I waited until the kids had cleared their plates and run upstairs. It was just the 2 of us, the remnants of the roast chicken sitting between us. I refilled his wine glass. So, I said, my voice casual, light. How are things really going in Charlotte? He froze, his wine glass halfway to his lips. What do you mean? Work is work. It is fine. It just seems like you are there all the time, I continued, idly tracing the rim of my own glass. That new branch must be taking a lot out of you. Everything okay? His eyes narrowed. The charming husband disappeared, replaced by a cold executive. Why are you asking that? His voice was suddenly sharp, defensive. I'm just asking, Reginald. As your wife, you seem distant. He put his glass down with a sharp clack that echoed in the quiet dining room. You know, Evelyn, he said, his voice low and condescending. You have been acting strange lately. Really strange. He leaned forward, as if sharing a concerned secret. You seem paranoid. Jumpy. Are you feeling okay? Is everything all right? With you? I stared at him. He was not just defending. He was attacking. He was flipping the script. He was painting me as the problem. He reached across the table and placed his hand over mine. It was not a gesture of comfort. It was a gesture of control. Patronizing. Maybe you are just tired, he said, his voice laced with false concern. All this time at home. Maybe it is getting to you. Maybe you should talk to someone. Evelyn, you seem unstable. I looked at his hand on mine. I looked into his cold, calculating eyes. He was not just having an affair. He was building a narrative. He was laying the groundwork to discredit me. He was gassing me, and I realized, with a chilling certainty, that this was far darker than simple infidelity. This was a strategy, and he was already 2 steps ahead. I sat in the formal dining room long after Reginald had retreated upstairs. The leftover food grew cold on the plates. His words hung in the air, thick and toxic, unstable, paranoid. Talk to someone. He had not just denied my suspicion. He had diagnosed me. He was building a case, and I, like a fool, had just shown him my hand. The next 2 days were a silent, suffocating war. The air in our beautiful 6-bedroom home grew thin and cold. We moved around each other like ghosts. The silence broken only by forced pleasantries in front of Imani and Jamal. Did you finish your math homework, sweetheart? Pass the salt, please. He was waiting. I was planning, or so I thought. It happened on Monday afternoon. The doorbell rang, a sharp, intrusive chime. I was in the living room, folding laundry, a basket of warm towels on my lap. I assumed it was an Amazon delivery. I opened the heavy front door. A thin man in a rumpled gray suit stood on my porch. He was chewing gum, his eyes bored. Evelyn Monroe? He asked, his voice flat. Yes. He shoved a thick manila envelope into my hand. It was heavy. You have been served. He turned and walked briskly back to his beat-up sedan before I could even form a question. I stood in the foyer, the heavy envelope cold in my hands. My name was typed across the front. My fingers trembled as I tore the seal. The first page read, "In the Circuit Court of Fulton County, Georgia." It was a petition for dissolution of marriage. He had filed. He was divorcing me. A cold laugh bubbled in my throat. The audacity. I sank onto the bottom step of our grand, curving staircase, the papers rattling in my lap. I started to read. My eyes flew to the section labeled Division of Assets. Petitioner, Reginald Monroe. Requests sole and exclusive use of the marital home. My breath caught in a painful gasp. He wanted the house, my house, the one I had built, decorated, and filled with love. Then I saw the next section. Custody of minor children. My blood turned to ice. Petitioner requests sole physical and legal custody of Imani Monroe and Jamal Monroe. No. The word was a dry, choked whisper. No, he would not. I frantically flipped through the pages, my heart pounding a sick rhythm against my ribs. I was searching for the why, the justification, and then I found it. It was an affidavit, signed by my husband. Grounds for custody. Respondent, Evelyn Monroe, has exhibited increasingly erratic and unstable behavior over the past 6 months. Respondent suffers from paranoid delusions regarding petitioner's fidelity, creating an unsafe and volatile environment for the minor children. Respondent is mentally and emotionally incompetent to provide adequate care, having been detached from reality and gainful employment for 15 years. The paper slipped from my numb fingers, scattering across the marble floor. His words from the dining room echoed in my head: unstable, paranoid, detached from reality. It was not just gaslighting. It was a calculated legal strategy. He had been planning this for months. He had provoked me, documented my reactions, and twisted my identity as a stay-at-home mother into a weapon. He was painting me as a crazy, incompetent housewife so he could take everything: my children, my home, my entire life. He was going to erase me and walk away clean into his new life with Chloe Banks. I stared at the scattered papers, the legal jargon, the cold, cruel lies. He thought I was just a wife. He thought I was just a mother. He had forgotten who I was. I sat on that cold marble floor for a long time. The house was silent. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the foyer, making the scattered white papers look like gravestones. I could not breathe. It felt as if Reginald had reached into my chest and physically squeezed the air from my lungs. Unstable, incompetent, detached from reality. These were not just legal terms. They were the weapons he had chosen to kill me with. For 15 years, I had poured every ounce of my being into this family. I had exchanged legal briefs for book reports. I had orchestrated his life, our children's lives, our entire world, so that he could climb the corporate ladder. I managed the finances. I oversaw the investments. I negotiated the contracts for the house repairs. I was the CEO of this family, a job that was 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with no salary. And in one signature, he had twisted that devotion into a mental illness. He was using my sacrifice, the very foundation he had begged me to build, as a sledgehammer to tear it all down. This was not just a divorce. This was an execution. He had been planning this all. The gaslighting at the dinner table, the feigned concern, the business trips that were not just for pleasure, but for plotting. He had been building his case against me while I was building a home for him. A wave of despair, so cold and heavy it was almost paralyzing, washed over me. He was a senior vice president. He was powerful, articulate, and charming. He had a team of corporate lawyers at his disposal. And what was I? In his narrative, in the cold language of this petition, I was just a paranoid housewife who had not earned a paycheck in over a decade. He was right. I was detached from his reality. I closed my eyes. I saw his smug face in the restaurant, kissing Chloe. I saw his condescending smile as he called me unstable. I saw him walking out of this house with my children, leaving me with nothing. A sound escaped my throat. It was low, guttural. It was not a sob. It was a growl. The despair did not just fade. It crystallized. It turned into something hard and sharp and cold. It turned into rage He thought I was weak. He thought I was just a mother. He thought the lawyer I used to be was long dead. I gathered the papers from the floor, my hands no longer shaking. I stacked them neatly, tapping them against the stair. I stood up, walked into the kitchen, and picked up my phone. He had declared war, but he had forgotten that I was the one with all the ammunition. I scrolled through my contacts, past the pediatricians, the school administrators, and the other PTA moms. My thumb hovered over a name I had not called in almost a year. Tamara Hayes. Tamara had been my best friend in law school, my study partner, my confidant. While I had traded the courtroom for the carpool line, Tamara had risen through the ranks. She was a federal prosecutor now. She was sharp-tongued, fearless, and completely intolerant of disrespect, especially toward women. My hand shook as I pressed the call button. I felt a sudden, sharp pang of embarrassment. I had let this friendship fade, consumed by my domestic life. Now, I was calling, broken and desperate. She picked up on the second ring. Evelyn Monroe? To what do I owe the honor? Did one of your kids finally burn the house down? Her voice was the same as I remembered, brisk, warm, and no nonsense. A sob I had not realized was trapped in my chest broke free. Tamara, I whispered, and the name came out sounding like a prayer. The joking tone in her voice vanished instantly. Evie, what is wrong? What happened? I told her everything. The words poured out in a flood I could not control. The Saturday morning, the red lace panties, Chloe's note, the bank statements, the Tiffany's necklace, the surveillance photos, and finally, the divorce papers, the accusations, unstable, incompetent, detached from reality. Tamara was silent for a long moment after I finished. The only sound was the quiet hum of the refrigerator. When she finally spoke, her voice was low and dangerous. That son of a bitch? Tamara, I do not know what to do. I choked out. He is painting me as crazy. He is going to take my children. No, Tamara said. Her voice was no longer that of my friend. It was the voice of a federal prosecutor. No, he is not. Listen to me. Evelyn, the woman I knew in law school, would never let this happen. The woman who cross-examined Professor Davies until he actually cried. She is still in there. She paused. He thinks he is fighting a housewife. We are going to remind him he is fighting an attorney. I am not an attorney anymore. Tam, I have not practiced in 15 years. That is a technicality. She shot back. You just took a very long sabbatical. Now, you are back. You are not going to hire some small-time family lawyer from the suburbs. Tamara continued, her voice gaining momentum. You are not going to negotiate. You are going to war. And I know exactly who to call. Who? You do not need a lawyer. Evie, you need a shark. His name is Marcus Chen. He specializes in eating arrogant, wealthy husbands for breakfast. Marcus Chen? I knew the name. He was a legend. Ruthless, expensive. Reginald wants to play dirty? Tamara's voice had a grim smile in it. Marcus will bury him. We are going to take that man for everything he has. And then we are going to take a little bit more. Just for the pain he caused. Marcus Chen's office was not in the suburbs. It was on the 50th floor of a steel and glass tower in Midtown Atlanta. The reception area was silent, decorated in shades of gray and black. No comforting magazines, no bowls of candy, just cold marble and modern art that looked angry. I sat on a leather sofa that probably cost more than my car. clutching a locked briefcase. Tamara had made the call. I was here, but my heart was pounding. Mrs. Monroe, Mr. Chen will see you now. I walked into his office. It was vast, with a floor-to-ceiling window that offered a godlike view of the city below. Marcus Chen was not what I expected. He was young, impeccably dressed in a custom suit, and radiated a sharp, predatory energy. He did not smile. Mrs. Monroe, he said, gesturing to a chair. He did not offer coffee or water. Tamara Hayes speaks highly of you. She said you were a lawyer. I am a lawyer. Mr. Chen, I said, my voice firmer than I felt. I have just been on sabbatical. I see. He sat opposite me. She also said your husband has filed for divorce and is attempting to paint you as mentally unstable to gain custody of your children and the marital home. That is correct, I said. I placed my briefcase on the low table between us and clicked it open. Reginald believes he is fighting a weak, stay-at-home mom. He has made a critical error. He has provided me with grounds. And I have brought you the evidence. Marcus Chen leaned back, steepling his fingers. He looked bored. Go on. I did not present my story with tears. I presented it as a case file. I pulled out the first folder, labeled petition, and slid it across the table. My husband's opening argument, grounds, my alleged instability and detachment from reality. Then I pulled out the second, thicker folder. And this, Mr. Chen, is my rebuttal. I laid out the exhibits, one by one, on the polished wood. Exhibit A, one pair of women's lace underwear and an accompanying note, recovered from the passenger side of my husband's vehicle. Bagged and dated. Marcus Chen's eyebrows lifted, just slightly. Exhibit B, corporate Amex statements for the last 8 months. I have highlighted the expenditures in question. Over $24,000 in non-business related travel, dining, and gifts. I tapped the Tiffany's charge, including a $1,847 necklace I never received. Exhibit C, phone records, highlighting over 200 hours of calls to one number, a Chloe Banks, who, according to Exhibit D, I slid over the printed LinkedIn profile, is a marketing manager at his company's Charlotte branch, age 32. And finally, Exhibit E. I placed the 8x10 glossy photo on top of the pile, the one from the restaurant, the kiss, illuminated by the streetlights, clear as day. Marcus Chen was silent. He picked up the photo. He looked at it, then at the bank statements, then at the Ziploc bag. He looked back up at me. The boredom was gone. A slow, cold smile spread across his face. It was the smile of a shark that had just scented blood in the water. Mrs. Monroe, he said, his voice almost a purr. This is not a case file. This is a public execution. He stood up and walked to his window, looking down at the city. His petition is garbage, an emotional, poorly constructed attack. We will have it thrown out. We are filing a counter-petition. Grounds, adultery. We will allege dissipation of marital assets. That $24,000, we are getting that back, with interest. And then he turned back to me, his eyes gleaming. We will add a claim for intentional infliction of emotional distress. His entire "You Are Unstable" campaign was a calculated move to defraud you of your assets. That is not just grounds for divorce. That is punitive. He picked up the petition against me and held it up. He wants the house? We are going to take his pension, his 401k, and his dignity. He is going to pay for your law school loans twice. He dropped the petition into his shredder. Welcome back to the bar, Mrs. Monroe. Let us get to work. The court ordered a mandatory mediation session before setting a trial date. We met in a sterile conference room in a downtown high-rise. The air was thick with tension and the smell of stale coffee. I walked in flanked by Marcus Chen. I wore a navy blue suit, my hair in a severe bun. I was no longer Evelyn the wife. I was Evelyn the respondent. Reginald was already there. He sat on the opposite side of a long, polished table, looking smug. Next to him sat his lawyer, a silver-haired man named Arthur Pittman, known for protecting the assets of Atlanta's wealthiest men. Evelyn, Reginald said, nodding curtly, as if we were passing in the hallway. I ignored him. I sat down and placed my briefcase on the table. The mediator, a tired-looking woman, droned on about finding amicable solutions. Arthur Pittman cut her off. Let us be blunt. My client has filed for custody on the grounds of Mrs. Monroe's clear emotional instability. Her detachment from gainful employment has warped her perspective. I felt Marcus's hand on my arm, a silent, stay calm. Mr. Monroe has generously offered a settlement. Pittman continued, sliding a paper across the table. He will allow Mrs. Monroe to keep her car and will provide a small apartment in a respectable neighborhood, provided she agrees to supervised visitation and mandatory psychiatric care. I almost laughed. It was insulting. He was offering me table scraps from my own life. Marcus pushed the paper back. We decline. Your offer is amusing. We countersue for the marital home. Sole custody. 100% of the dissipated assets and punitive damages. Reginald's smug look faltered. That is insane. You have no grounds. Furthermore, Marcus continued, we would like to address the false allegations in your petition. Pittman smiled, a thin, reptilian gesture. Allegations? Mr. Monroe has witnesses to his wife's instability. In fact, her erratic behavior has extended to his workplace. What? I said, my voice low. We have a witness, Pittman said, gesturing to the door. Ms. Chloe Banks. My heart stopped. The door opened, and Chloe Banks walked in. She was dressed in a conservative gray suit, her hair pulled back. She looked like a victim. She sat down, avoiding my eyes. Ms. Banks, Pittman said gently, can you tell us about your interactions with Mrs. Monroe? Chloe looked at the mediator, her eyes wide and fearful. It was terrifying. She started harassing me at work, calling my office, hanging up. She sent me threatening emails, telling me to stay away from her husband. I stared at her, my blood turning to ice. It was a lie, a complete fabricated lie. I had never once contacted this woman. She seemed unhinged, Chloe whispered, dabbing at a non-existent tear. I became genuinely afraid for my safety and for Mr. Monroe's. Reginald nodded gravely, playing the part of the concerned husband protecting his colleague. I finally understood. This was their story. I was not the wife who had discovered an affair. I was the crazy woman who had imagined one and was now harassing an innocent coworker. My evidence, the phone logs, the time spent in Charlotte, was being twisted. That, I said, my voice shaking with cold rage, is perjury. The mediator looked at me, her expression hardening. Mrs. Monroe, these are serious accusations. Marcus Chen finally spoke, his voice quiet, but slicing through the tension. We refuse to continue this mediation. Your client and his colleague are committing perjury. He stood up, gathering his papers. Mr. Pittman, you have made a fatal error. Pittman looked nonplussed. I have done no such thing. We have the emails. Oh, I'm sure you do, Marcus said, pausing at the door. But we have the truth? He looked at Reginald. You wanted to avoid a public trial? You just guaranteed one. The smug look was gone from Reginald's face. He looked afraid. The day of the trial arrived. The Fulton County courtroom was cold, the air heavy with the scent of old wood and anxiety. I sat next to Marcus. My hands clasped so tightly in my lap, my knuckles were white. Reginald sat across the aisle, looking the part of the concerned, aggrieved husband in a somber navy suit. Chloe Banks was seated in the front row behind him, her expression one of polite concern. The first day belonged to them. Reginald's lawyer, Arthur Pittman, was brilliant, in a terrifying, soul-destroying way. He did not raise his voice. He was calm, fatherly. He painted a masterpiece of deception. He called Reginald to the stand, who spoke with deep, practiced sadness about his wife's mental decline. I did not know what to do, Reginald said, his voice thick with fake emotion. She became obsessed, accusatory. I suggested therapy, but she refused. Then she started lashing out. Then Pittman called Chloe Banks. She was even better. She wept on the stand. Mr. Pittman, Marcus objected. Miss Banks' testimony is irrelevant. This is a divorce proceeding, not a workplace dispute. Your Honor, Pittman said smoothly, it speaks directly to Mrs. Monroe's state of mind. Her instability was not contained to the home. It became a public danger. The judge, a formidable-looking woman in her 60s, named Judge Althea Hayes, nodded. I will allow it. Proceed, Ms. Banks. Chloe described the harassment, the supposed phone calls, and then Pittman produced his trump card. Your Honor, we present Defendant's Exhibit A, a series of emails sent from Mrs. Monroe's personal email account to Ms. Banks. He projected them onto the screen. They were horrifying, vile, threatening messages, filled with curses and accusations, all sent from my email address. I was so scared. Chloe sobbed. She said she would ruin me. I stared at the screen, my blood running cold. That is not. I did not write those. I whispered to Marcus. He must have hacked my account. It was a brilliant, evil move. He had used my own email to create a false trail, knowing I would not be able to prove I had not sent them. The final blow came at the end of the day. Judge Hayes looked down at us from her bench, her face stern. She looked directly at me, her eyes filled with disapproval. Mrs. Monroe, she said, her voice sharp. The court is deeply troubled by this evidence. Your husband has presented a clear, documented pattern of instability and harassment. She then turned to Marcus. Mr. Chen, I have seen your counter petition. You allege adultery. You allege financial misconduct. But so far, the judge continued, her gaze sweeping back to me, all I have seen is a mountain of evidence supporting Mr. Monroe's claims. I have seen very little from you. Besides the suspicions of a scorned woman, I hope, for your sake, you have more than just theories and a pair of underwear when we resume tomorrow. As it stands, I am gravely concerned for the well-being of these children. I am strongly leaning toward granting Mr. Monroe's petition for an emergency evaluation of the respondent. An evaluation. She was going to force me into a psychiatric hold. The gavel struck. Court is adjourned until 10 a.m. tomorrow. I sat there, frozen, paralyzed. It was happening. He was winning. Reginald stood up, buttoning his jacket. He gave me a look, a small, smug, pitying smile. He had won. He had painted me as crazy, and the judge believed him. Across the aisle, he leaned down and whispered something to Chloe. She smiled. I did not sleep that night. I sat in my hotel room, staring at the wall, the judge's words echoing in my head. Gravely concerned. Emergency evaluation. Scorned woman. He had won. He had set a trap, and I had walked right into it. The next morning, I walked into the courtroom feeling like a woman walking to her own execution. Reginald was already there, looking confident, occasionally whispering to Pittman and smiling. Chloe sat behind him, a picture of false innocence. Court is now in session, Judge Hayes said, her face impossible to read. Mr. Chen, your counterpetition. As I said yesterday, I hope you have more than theories. Marcus Chen stood up. He was unnervingly calm. Thank you, Your Honor. The defense calls Reginald Monroe to the stand. A flicker of surprise crossed Reginald's face. He had not expected to be called by us. He swaggered to the stand, took the oath, and sat down, looking at Marcus with open disdain. Marcus was polite. Mr. Monroe, you testified yesterday that your wife, my client, began exhibiting unstable behavior approximately 6 months ago. Is that correct? Yes, Reginald said, his voice smooth. That is when the paranoia started. The accusations. I see. And you also testified that your relationship with your colleague, Ms. Chloe Banks, is purely professional. Correct? That is correct. She is a valued colleague whom my wife tragically targeted. I understand. Marcus paused, then turned to the projector. Your Honor, I would like to present Plaintiff's Exhibit A. The 8x10 photo of Reginald kissing Chloe outside the French bistro filled the wall screen. The courtroom was silent. Reginald's face went white. Pittman leaped to his feet. Objection. Relevance. This is character assassination. It is highly relevant, Your Honor, Marcus said, his voice like steel. It speaks directly to the motive for the perjury we all witnessed in this courtroom yesterday. Judge Hayes leaned forward, her eyes fixed on the photograph. Objection overruled. Mr. Chen, you have my full attention. Mr. Monroe, Marcus continued, is this what you call purely professional? Or is this, perhaps, a moment of weakness? That? It is not what it looks like. Reginald stammered. She was upset about a work project. I am sure she was. Marcus clicked to the next slide. The American Express statements. Perhaps this was also a work project. The $2,450 charge from the Ritz-Carlton. Or this, the $412.50 dinner for two. Or this, Mr. Monroe, a $1,847 necklace from Tiffany & Company. You testified your wife imagined your infidelity. Did she also imagine this necklace? Because I can assure the court, she never received it. Reginald was no longer smug. He was sweating, gripping the rail of the witness box. And now, Marcus said, let us address the harassing emails. He turned to face Reginald. You heard Ms. Banks testify that my client sent her vile, Threatening messages. A terrible thing. Tell me, Mr. Monroe, as a senior VP of a major corporation, you are quite familiar with IT, are you not? I know my way around a computer. Objection! Pittman tried again. Where is this going? To the truth, Mr. Pittman. Marcus said, I would like to call my next witness, Mr. David Riley, a cyberforensics expert. Reginald's face went from white to a sickly shade of gray. A new man was sworn in. Mr. Riley was all business. Mr. Riley, Marcus said, at my request, did you conduct a forensic analysis of the email headers from the alleged harassing messages? I did. And what did you find? The emails presented by the plaintiff, Mr. Riley said, are indeed fraudulent. While they appear to be sent from Mrs. Monroe's account, the IP addresses of origin tell a different story. He pointed to the screen. Several of the emails, including the most threatening ones, did not originate from Mrs. Monroe's home network or her phone. They originated from an IP address registered to the corporate offices of Apex Solutions in Charlotte, North Carolina. A gasp rippled through the courtroom. Chloe Banks, in the front row, let out a small, strangled sound. And Mr. Riley continued, the specific user terminal that sent those emails was logged in at the time as C. Banks. Chaos. It appears Ms. Banks was so harassed, Marcus said, his voice booming, that she sent the emails to herself from her own desk. Objection! Objection! Pittman was shouting. And what about the other emails, Mr. Riley? Marcus pressed on. The ones that did come from Mrs. Monroe's home IP? Those were sent from her laptop. Yes, Riley said. But the user logs show they were sent at 3:15 a.m. on a Tuesday. At that time, her laptop security logs show Mr. Monroe, using his administrator password, was remotely accessing the device from his own laptop. Marcus turned to the judge. Your Honor, this was never a divorce. This was a conspiracy. It was a malicious, premeditated campaign to frame my client, to defraud her of her assets, and to steal her children by painting her as mentally incompetent. He walked slowly back to his table. As for the delusion that started it all, the paranoia that my client supposedly invented, Marcus pulled on a pair of black latex gloves. He reached into a box and pulled out the sealed Ziploc bag. This item was logged into evidence by my client on the day of its discovery, he said, addressing the judge. The red lace panties and Chloe's note were held up for the entire court to see. Your Honor, we present Exhibit G, recovered from Mr. Monroe's vehicle before he filed his fraudulent petition. He turned, not to the judge, but to Chloe Banks. Ms. Banks, perhaps you can confirm for the court? Are these yours? The courtroom erupted. Chloe burst into real hysterical sobs. Pittman was shuffling papers, his face ashen. Reginald just stared, his mouth open, a man completely and utterly destroyed. Judge Hayes's face was a mask of pure cold fury. Slam, slam, slam. Her gavel was deafening. Order! Order in my court! She waited until the room was silent, her eyes boring into Reginald, then Chloe, then Pittman. Mr. Monroe? Ms. Banks? Mr. Pittman? You will all remain seated. Bailiff, secure the courtroom doors. She leaned forward. We are no longer discussing a divorce. We are now discussing perjury. We are discussing conspiracy to commit fraud. We are discussing the filing of false instruments. And Mr. Monroe, she said, her voice dropping to a terrifying whisper, you are in contempt of my court. I looked across the aisle at my husband. He finally met my gaze. The smugness, the charm, the power. It was all gone. All that was left was a hollow, terrified man who had lost everything. The gavel fell like a death sentence. The final judgment was swift and brutal. Judge Hayes was a woman who did not suffer fools, and she despised liars. I was granted the divorce on the grounds of adultery and intentional infliction of emotional distress. I was awarded sole physical and legal custody of Imani and Jamal. I was awarded the marital home, free and clear. I was awarded 70% of our liquid assets, his entire 401k, and a punitive alimony sum that made Marcus Chen smile. Reginald's petition was dismissed with prejudice. Judge Hayes referred both him and Chloe Banks to the district attorney's office for perjury and conspiracy. Reginald sat slumped at the table, a broken man in an expensive suit. His lawyer, Arthur Pittman, was already packing his briefcase, avoiding his client's eyes. Chloe Banks was escorted from the courtroom by a bailiff, sobbing. I stood up, my spine straight for the first time in months. I walked past Reginald's table without a glance. As I reached the door, I paused and looked back at the man I had given 15 years of my life to. He looked up, his eyes hollow and pleading. Evelyn, please. I said nothing. I just turned and walked out of the courtroom, leaving him to face the wreckage he had built. The fallout was spectacular. The story was too juicy for the Atlanta business gossip mill to ignore. Senior VP at Apex Solutions commits perjury in divorce trial. Affair with marketing manager revealed. Reginald was fired within the week. Moral turpitude, his termination letter called it. Chloe was fired, too, and later pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor perjury charge to avoid jail time. My husband, the man who had stood at the top of the corporate ladder, was unemployable. The man who had tried to take my home from me was now living in a small, rented apartment, his assets frozen, his reputation shattered. The first thing I did after the judgment was final. I sold the Audi. I did not even trade it in. I sold it to a used car lot for cash and watched them drive it away, taking the last ghost of his betrayal with it. I took the kids to the beach for a month. We needed to heal, to breathe air that was not thick with lies. When we returned, I paid for Jamal and Imani to see a therapist, someone to help them process their father's betrayal. And I went back to school. I took a bar refresher course. It was the hardest I had studied in my life, harder even than the first time. My legal knowledge, buried for 15 years, came rushing back. The language of contracts, of torts, of evidence. It was like a native tongue I had simply forgotten I spoke. 6 months after the trial, I passed the Georgia bar exam. Again. This morning, I stood on the sidewalk in downtown Atlanta, not far from my old firm. The air was crisp. I was wearing a new suit, a sharp black one that I had bought with my own money. I looked up at the glass door. The gold lettering on it was still new. The Monroe Law Group. Evelyn Monroe, Juris Doctor, specializing in family law and asset recovery. I took a deep breath, opened the door, and walked into my new office, my new life. Reginald had made a fatal miscalculation. He thought I was just a housewife. He thought I was just a mother. He had forgotten that I was a lawyer. And the first lesson I taught him was never ever underestimate a woman who has nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. That part of me, the lawyer I thought I had sacrificed, was never truly lost. She was just waiting. Thank you, my dear friends, for walking this road with me. If this story touched your heart, I would truly love to hear from you. Tell me, what city or country are you listening from? And what would you rate this story from 0 to 10? May God's peace be with you always